Hey, Cubs, didn't you learn anything from last year?
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I'm a baseball podcaster. I've been doing it for well over a decade, and this is my sixth season here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully, but Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And if you're going to be leaving any messages on the social media, make sure to put that hashtag Everyday Sully so we get an idea who's listening to us. And what else? What other business we got to take care of? Oh, we'll take care of this bit of business. The trivia question that I put out the other day, which was what team who had a 20-game winning streak, actually went on to go to the World Series, actually won the pennant. We know that the A's in the Moneyball year didn't. We know the Indians a few years ago when they had their big, long winning streak didn't. Who was the only team to go on a 20-game winning streak to actually win the pennant? Well, Scott Harsmeyer, and actually a couple other people, Jay Brinkfire, got it correct. It was the 1935 Cubs. They had a 20-game win streak. They went to the World Series. They lost to the Detroit Tigers. But there you go. We're going to talk a little bit about the Cubs and any postseason hopes they have, because last night was a game of gut punch losses, but something about how the Cubs lost, I don't know, felt like a little bit worse. Before we go into that, though, let's figure out who owned baseball for the 8th day of April. So who owned baseball on the 8th day of April, 2024? Nestor Cortes pitched 8 innings, allowed only 2 hits as the Yankees blanked the Marlins 7-0. Brandon Nimmo reached base 5 times, including 2 game-tying home runs as the Mets stunned the Braves 8-7. Mike Trout missed the cycle by only a double, getting 8 total bases as the Angels powered past Tampa Bay 7-1, and Spencer Turnbull threw 6 scoreless frames, striking out 6 as the Phillies won 5-3 over St. Louis. Half wobs went to Miles Michaelis, who pitched well, and the Cardinals lost to Philadelphia. Manuel Margot, who homered, and the Twins lost to the Dodgers. Bryce Terang homered and doubled, but the Brewers' comeback fell just short. And Jose Urena stopped the bleeding with 4 innings of shutout relief. But the Astros lost 10-5. They all own baseball on the 8th day of April, 2024. So, yesterday, oh, by the way, before we continue here, I am pinch hitting also. If you like what I do here, you're going to get twice the Sully this week, because I am hosting 5 brand new episodes of Locked On MLB this week, and also 5 episodes of Locked On A's, because the A's were between hosts at Locked On A's, and I figured this was a big week if you're an A's fan to want to have a podcast and to want to have a sense of discussion. And so I called up our good folks at Locked On and I said, hey, do you know what? I'll do it this week. And so I did. I dropped a brand new episode, dropped yesterday on Monday. It's not a crossover. It's a brand new, completely new episode of Locked On A's. We're doing the crossover is being dropped today, which was my interview with Matt George. But I'm going to be doing a multi-part interview with a friend of this podcast, Melissa Lockard, who is part of The Athletic, the great sports magazine. And at the end of this episode, I'm going to play part of the interview I had with Melissa Lockard, and then eventually, if you go to Locked On A's, you can hear the whole interview. Okay, let's just talk about yesterday. There was some real gut punch games that happened. Let's first just go to the Astros. The Astros wound up playing a game where the Astros didn't had a game where they actually came back. They let up a whopping 5 runs in the first inning, which would make anyone go, file that under, yikes. Blair Henley was the starting pitcher. He got only 1 out, and it's a rivalry game. It's the Astros versus the Rangers, and the Astros are trying to dust themselves off from not a terrific start, getting swept by the Yankees, and it looked like they were only getting victories if Blanco was throwing masterpieces. And they're down 5-2 in the first. That doesn't look good for them. But suddenly they came storming back. Jordan Alvarez had a fantastic game. Oh, I'm sure some people felt he should have owned baseball, but I gave it to Trout. Forgive me. Um, Brock Burke came in replacing Haney, and he didn't do the job. And eventually, the team that let up 5 runs in the first inning wound up winning the game 10-5. Positive thing going for the Astros there to turn that around. The gut punch is Framber Valdez. Remember him? He's their big ace. Well, he was scratched due to elbow soreness. You know, whenever you see a drama and one of the characters goes little coughs a little bit, you know there's going to be a dramatic disease that comes through that soap opera. Well, whenever I hear, hey, I feel a slight tinge in my elbow, that's when you start thinking, oh God, the specter of Tommy John is going to fly over the Astros. I'm not wishing that. I'm just saying that tends to be what seems to sort of happen these days. So a great win there, but it was a little bit of a scary moment. The defending nationally champion Arizona Diamondbacks had a gut punch game because they had a big 4-1 lead over the hapless Rockies. And what happened? They dropped that one 7-5. There was almost a gut punch game for the Milwaukee Brewers, as the Brewers took a was an 8-0 lead and a 9-3 lead. The Cincinnati Reds, I'm sorry, the Reds took a 8-0 lead and eventually a 9-3 lead over the Brewers. In big part to Ellie De La Cruz, who had a massive home run to center field and inside the Parker. And then suddenly the Brewers woke up and made it a 9-8 game. Eventually, Cincinnati would hold on and win that game 10-8. But that's a game that if you're the Brewers and are trying to win that division, you're going to look back going, God, we scored 8 runs and lost. If you're the Reds, you're just saying you just dodged a bullet because, once again, if you finish the end of the year a game or so out, you're going to look back at some of the games that you blew. Which brings us back to the Cubs. The Cubs, the only franchise to put together a 20-win streak in a season to go on to the World Series. This Cubs team has images of winning the National League Central and possibly going far because the National League Central is not very competitive this year. And so when you're not very competitive this year, like the NL Central is, you can't have moments where you give games away. And if you saw what happened yesterday in San Diego, I know it's still technically early April, but wow. Let's go over the game for a second, and then we'll go over the ramifications of what just happened. The Cubs went against the Padres. Yu Darvish, former Cub, pitched for the Padres, and he did not have it. The Cubs absolutely, it was just double, walk, hit by pitch, walk. I mean, Darvish was showing no control right there. After the second inning, it was 4-0. Bellinger got a big hit that drove in a few runs. And then they lifted Darvish, and Pedro Avila was no better. Double, triple. And next thing you know, it was 8-0 into the bottom of the fourth, and everyone's thinking the Padres are going to be throwing a infielder. So Javier Assad's pitching well, lets up 2-run home run. It's 8-2. Okay, fine. It's 8-2. Let's bring out the caravan of relievers. Then came an error, and then the roof caved in. 8-0 suddenly became 8-7 after Xander Bogaerts' home run and a triple by Kim. And then Tatis hit a 2-run home run with 2 outs in the bottom of the 8th inning. And next thing you know, it became a save situation for the Padres. Final score 9-8 in one of the it's tied for the worst loss in terms of giving up runs for the Cubs in terms of a deficit that they coughed up. 9-8. Now, it's just a win. They play again. They dust things off. But there's something about this loss that you're going to have to take a good long look because, well, quite frankly, this is what cost them last year. Hey, are you a fan of daily fantasy sports? Well, you need to go to PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more than or less than or 2 or more player stats, and you watch the winnings roll in. The regular season has begun in baseball, and we're starting to see some cool stats running up. Don't miss out your chance to get your favorite players with a diamond with your PrizePicks entries, whether it's strikeouts, RBI, first inning runs. Take your pick in the more than or less than from PrizePicks today. And by the way, PrizePicks now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account for this baseball season. Now, let's see what we got. I got it right here. We got my app. I'm going more than for O'Neal Cruz. And, I have a feeling about Eugenio Suarez. I'm going to go more than for him as well. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's right. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more. Pick less. Do you know what? It's that easy. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you to bring the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV's channel app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let me bring up something, not from me, but from another Locked On host, which is Sam Olber from Locked On Cubs. We got to get him on the show pretty soon. He posted this after the fiasco last night. He said, since September 1 of last year, the Cubs have lost 13 games in which they've had a lead. They have blown leads of 6-0, 8-2, and 8-0. They have had 7 walk-offs against them. Think about that. From September 1, 13 games which they've had a lead and some giant leads that have been blown. Now let's talk about what the consequences of that were. The Cubs last year were in case you forgot, in a dogfight for a playoff spot. They, in the month of September, head-to-head against the Arizona Diamondbacks, they lost 3 out of 4 in Arizona and were swept at home. In other words, they played 7 games against the Diamondbacks head-to-head and lost 6 of them. They led up back-to-back walk-off losses to Cincinnati in early September. They had a walk-off loss to Arizona on the 16th of September, a walk-off loss to Atlanta on the 27th of September, and a walk-off loss to Milwaukee on the 29th of September. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 losses where they clearly had a chance to win. Let's just say they only had 3 walk-off losses instead of 5 walk-off losses in a month. Do you know what that would have meant? That would have meant they would have gone to the playoffs. Last year, the Cubs were a playoff team as late as September 28th. September 28th. They were one of the wild card teams. That's pretty late in the game. September 28th. Then they wound up losing to the Braves, walk off to the Brewers. Then they did win 1 game against Milwaukee, then they lost the finale. A game here or there, they would have won. They would have been in the playoffs. They would have been in the playoffs over the Arizona Diamondbacks. And how did the Diamondbacks do last year? You remember? They kind of sort of went to the World Series. And I am not someone who who cares at all about television ratings. I don't. And I'm not someone who's sitting there going with pom-poms going, I hope Fox and everyone gets the highest ratings possible. There's no microscope powerful enough to detect how little I care about TV ratings. And I thought the Diamondbacks getting to the World Series last year was a pretty cool story because we were filled with good young players ahead of schedule. And I was also doing a lot of crossovers with Miller Thomas from Locked On Diamondbacks, and it made our conversations more fun. But if you're Fox and you had an unlikely team going to the World Series, which one do you think they would rather have had, the Diamondbacks or the Cubs? I'm not saying, I'm just saying. I think the Diamondbacks were a fun story, but I just bring that up, Cub fans. Yes, it's very easy to dissect what it meant in September to see things falling apart. However, these games count just as much. And if the Cubs do fall just short, because we know this is a weird division, the Cubs seem to be the only team that wants to win it. However, you could have a surprise. The Reds could surprise, the Brewers could hold on, the Pirates could win. You can't lose these games. You cannot lose stupid games at any point during the regular season. By the way, everyone was wondering what was going on with Blake Snell, the person who has joined the list of names like Randy Johnson, Gaylord Perry, Roy Halladay, Pedro Martinez, Roger Clemens, Max Scherzer, as people who have won the Cy Young Award in both leagues. Coming off a Cy Young season, couldn't get himself a contract until the last minute. He pitched his first game with the Giants last night, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good, but in a way, you couldn't expect it to be. I know this is crazy to say, but this was almost a spring training game. I wonder if he was not allowed to be an extended spring training or start the season on the injured list and do a rehab start in San Jose or in Sacramento or wherever they're having their minor league rehab these days. I don't know that, neither do you. But Snell was pitched 72 pitches in 3 innings. He let up 3 hits and 2 walks, let up 3 runs, and the Giants wound up getting clobbered by the Washington Nationals by a final score of 8-1. It wasn't a great game by any stretch of the imagination, but do you know what? Let's not go crazy. Seriously, let's not go crazy because it's his first start. Yamamoto's first start with the Dodgers was an absolute dog, and there have been a lot of times where it's like your first time in, he didn't have a full spring training. I wouldn't panic just yet. I wouldn't panic for the Giants just yet. If he starts to develop, there you go. We start to see some good, solid improvement there from the Giants. We got a pretty interesting day of baseball today. A lot of day games going on, including the Red Sox home opener, Brian Bello and Corbin Burns and the Red Sox and the Orioles. That's going to be an interesting day. And I bring up the Blake Snell situation because he is the former ace right there, the guy who's coming off defending Cy Young season. The Giants are playing the Nats today, and it's Kyle Harrison pitching. And Kyle Harrison is the supposed future ace. So we're going to see what's going to happen to see if he can hold up his end of the ace bargain. We come back from a break. I'm going to play part of our interview with Melissa Lockard of The Athletic, and which you'll be able to hear the whole interview on Locked On A's. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts of your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only and exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on the Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV's channel app. Locked On Sports Day is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows like this one, covering every league. Find Locked On Sports today, now available on the free Fire TV's channel app. Okay, as promised, here's part of our interview with Melissa Lockard of The Athletic. The whole interview will be seen on Locked On A's. I would like to see them win a World Series in Sacramento, just to see how weird that would be. But I want to see them win a World Series in Oakland too. So,
well, they won 4.
They did. They
Yeah.
did. They've won more than they've won as many as the Mets and the Cleveland Indians / Guardians franchises combined.
Yep.
They've won more than the Mets and the Angels have combined.
Yeah. They've been to the playoffs, 3 times more often than the Mariners, So I think, there's the history that's being left behind, I think probably shouldn't be understated as well. This has not been 57 years of bad baseball. This has been some years of bad baseball, but there's been, interspersed with some of the greatest eras of baseball outside of, Yankees and Dodgers and the bigger teams in the history of the league. And, what happens to that history, what happens to that mystique, I think, it remains to be seen, but I think a lot of it is going to be lost. And it's really sad to see that baseball doesn't value its own history, I think, as well, because, you're looking at the names that are going to be talked about, and wherever they end up, they're not going to mean as much as they meant here. So
just to put one thing in perspective here, I was born in 1972, the year they won their first World Series in Oakland. Between 1971 and 1992, a 21-year stretch, the A's were actually, you could probably stretch a little further, but the A's were in the playoffs more often than the Yankees.
Yep.
In that stretch.
Yeah, and they outspent them too for a period of time.
They did. And for a period of time, the A's were the team of the Bay Area.
Yeah.
They were
the team of baseball. I mean, when I grew up in my childhood, there wasn't a franchise that was more intriguing, more, sexy in terms of the star power they had, that the stadium was, as nice as any stadium that you could roll out there. And, times changed and things age. And obviously the facility isn't what it was in 1989. But, a lot of the elements that made it a great stadium are actually still there. And the people who made it a great stadium are mostly still there. And I think that, to have dismissed it because some guy got to own this team for, 25 years and do nothing with it, I think, and they still managed to be good even during that period of time, just despite all of it, which is kind of hard to believe too. But this one person took what really was a special thing and just squashed it. If nothing else, he should be remembered solely for that, really.
I think as someone who lived in the Bay Area, so I was there, my senior year of high school was the year of the '89 World Series. So I was there when, the Giants had, Will Clark, Kevin Mitchell, Rick Russell, all them, and the A's had Ricky Henderson, Dave Henderson, obviously the Bash brothers, and Eck and Stewart and Welch and all them. And at that time, the Giants were the team threatening to leave, not the A's. And both teams have had stretches of success and stretches of simultaneous success.
Yeah.
But they've never had a moment ever, where both teams had the stadium they wanted. There was never a moment, because everyone hated Candlestick. Everything everyone says now about the Oakland Coliseum, they said about Candlestick. Except the weather was worse. I think Candlestick was worse.
Yeah.
I've said that when the Giants decided to come to San Francisco instead of Minnesota, they went to the mayor of San Francisco and said, "Where's the worst place to put a stadium?" And they said, "Candlestick Point." Said, "Then get us a shovel. We will break ground here." There was the worst place to put a stadium. And the Coliseum was the crown jewel of stadiums when I was going to high school in the Bay Area, because the stick was awful. Don't be nostalgic for the stick. That place sucked.
Yeah.
That was terrible. And they wanted to move out of there, and they never had. We now have Oracle Park, which could be the best stadium in baseball. But when you looked at the renderings and everything that they wanted to do with Howard Terminal, the Howard Terminals, that was the stadium I wanted. Because I saw the San Jose and the the Fremont, the this, and that. The other. When I saw the Howard Terminal one, I felt like, oh, please build that one. Please build that one. That looks like it even looked like it was built into like with a grassy area around it. It was going to be gorgeous. And I wanted to see what would happen to the A's franchise if they had a destination stadium, and they never did.
Yeah. Well, and, I mean, the world changed in 2020, and the world changed a lot in the Bay Area in 2020. And I think what's interesting is that nobody's taken a moment to say, in our new reality, when more people work from home and they don't work downtown, and you see what's happened to downtown San Francisco and even the foot traffic to the stadiums that are there, and you have this location that is literally the easiest place for at least half of the Bay Area to get to, and it's a big half. You can get there on the freeway. You can get there from BART. You can get there on Amtrak. It's very, very convenient. And it's a big parcel of land that they're the only professional team in now, that nobody could have taken a beat and said, we could build that gorgeous stadium there and keep it so that it's easy for everyone to get to, and invest in a part of the city that really could use some revitalization. I mean, the lack of imagination there and the things that could have been done will be talked about for a very long time. And, and it's a shame that the people of Oakland who have, put their heart and soul into this franchise for a long time deserved better. They absolutely deserved better. And I mean, the people of Oakland just deserve better from all of this anyway. But in terms of how this franchise has treated them, it's completely as if they are disposable, and they had an opportunity, and they would have made so much money. I mean, it's a transit hub. You could have built housing there. People can get on BART and go anywhere in the city that they want to without even owning a car. And they're just going to walk away from it. It's mind-boggling.
I'm so glad you said that, because I always thought I was crazy. Like, all right, the Warriors are gone, the Raiders are gone. You have a big canvas to paint on.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just sad. I think that's sort of the sentiment, is just that, a lot is lost that didn't have to be. And baseball will be different moving forward. And I think we've seen it changing anyway. I think a lot of what a lot of us remembered from, why we loved it going to games when we were kids has been slowly dripping away. And I think this is as glaring an example of how far the league has moved away from its fans. Because, for the first time ever, other fans in other areas of the country supported A's fans in this fight, right? Like they understood it and they related to it, and they understood it and related to it because in some small way it's happening to them as well, right? Their ownership is taking advantage of them in ways that they felt uncomfortable. And it was to see it so blatantly done on such a large scale with one team, is resonating. And, and at some point fans are going to become disinterested in playing this game with these teams, after a while. And so if nothing else, it serves as a warning. But, it's sad. It's sad that we don't have a team in Montreal too. But, I think we lose something every time one of these things happens, especially now. I mean, we look at the beginning and there was a lot of moving parts, in the first 50 years of major sports in America. But there's been so much stability since the mid 70s. That these things, you can't look at what happened in like 1950 and compare it to what's happening now, because it just doesn't happen. And when it does happen, it really, it changes entire relationships to fans to their sport. So, yeah.
Well, I bought tickets for the final game. I'm going to be there. And for at least one more day, I'll be able to say, let's go.
I'm curious to see if the entire season attendance will be smaller than that last game. I think it very well could be if they end up selling all 60,000 seats that are available.
Yeah, I think you're right. But anyway, well, Melissa Lockard, I'm going to cut this up into more than one episode here, but thanks so much for being part of both Locked On MLB and Locked On A's for this week. Tell the good listeners and the angry A's fans out there where they can follow your work.
Yeah, you can find me at The Athletic, which is not The Athletics. That gets very confusing when talking about me. But at The Athletic, I also cover a lot of minor league baseball. So you can find a lot of stuff on that as well. And obviously our entire MLB team, I think, is first in class. So definitely check us out all year. We've got a lot of great stuff going on.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. I'm going to end recording. Thank you, Melissa. We had a wonderful conversation about all aspects of the A's. Follow the interview at Locked On A's, which will be dropping tomorrow. I am going to be hosting the show all week long. Hey, let's do the trivia question here. A's moving is no new story. It's been happening since the 50s. They were being rumored to move all over the place while they were in Kansas City and now in Oakland. In the 1960s, the A's announced they were going to move to Louisville, Kentucky, and they were going to change their name. What was the branding that Charlie Finley was going to do for the A's if they moved from Kansas City to Louisville? A move that was at one point announced in the newspaper. Put the answers down here at Locked On MLB on YouTube or Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow me. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, talking about blown wins and more A's frustration. This has been Locked On MLB for the 9th day of April 2024. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.